So, we need to talk about the COP30 climate summit in Belém, Brazil. This was supposed to be a massive turning point for the planet. But as we're about to see, the story that actually unfolded was one of a huge promise that was, well, left completely unfulfilled. Okay, so here is the central mystery. Picture this. You have a global climate summit right in the Amazon rainforest. Weeks of intense back-and-forth negotiations. And then the final agreement comes out, and the one phrase that scientists, activists, and so many countries say matters most, fossil fuels, is just gone, vanished. How on earth does that even happen? Well, let's get into it. And look, the stakes here are just incredibly high. This number, it's from a brand new UN analysis, and it shows the path we are currently on. Even if every single country fulfills every single promise they've made, we're still rocketing towards a dangerously warmer world, way, way beyond that 1.5-degree target we all agreed to in Paris. So to really understand what went wrong, we've got to go back to the beginning. Because this summit, it was set up with these sky-high expectations, which honestly just makes the final results even more of a shock. You know, the location itself was such a powerful statement. Holding the summit right in the heart of the Amazon, it got nicknamed the Forest COP. The symbolism was crystal clear. This was supposed to be the moment we finally connect the dots between climate action and protecting the actual lungs of our planet. The whole world was watching, expecting a really bold plan. But yeah, all that hope, it basically ran headfirst into a political brick wall. The final agreement, they called it the Methane text, which is a word for collective effort, ironically. It ended up being a document defined by what it left out. The one thing that more than 80 countries were demanding, a clear plan to move away from fossil fuels, was just erased. And let's be clear, that language didn't just disappear by accident. No way. It was the result of an incredibly intense, high-stakes political battle that pretty much defined the entire summit. Okay, so check this out. This timeline really shows you just how fast things completely fell apart. Early in the week, there was some real optimism. The very first draft actually had an option for a transition away from fossil fuels. Then, by Wednesday, you had this huge group of over 80 nations, the Ambition Coalition, pushing for even stronger language. But then, the resistance dug in. An opposition bloc threatened to just walk out entirely. By Friday, the standoff was over. The new text came out and poof, any mention of phasing out fossil fuels was gone. So what this really boils down to is a massive tug of war for the future. On one side, you had this huge coalition, everyone from Europe to vulnerable island nations, all saying, hey, the science is clear, we have to get off fossil fuels. But on the other side, you had this powerful group of oil-producing states and major consumers pushing back hard, arguing it would completely wreck their economies. This quote from Colombia's environment minister, wow, it really gets to the heart of the frustration in those final hours. For them, a weak deal wasn't just a weak deal. It was a failure of climate multilateralism. The very idea that all these countries can actually work together to solve this crisis. It was about something much bigger than just a document. It was about trust in the entire global system. But here's the thing, that fight over fossil fuels, it wasn't the only deadlock, not by a long shot. There was another massive battle going on behind the scenes, and this one was all about money. Who pays for this crisis, and exactly how much? And to really get this, we have to understand this term loss and damage. This isn't about building seawalls for the future. This is about paying for the devastating impacts that are happening right now. The homes that are gone, the farms that are washed away, even entire cultures that are being permanently lost. And the scale of this is, it is just staggering. Experts estimate that vulnerable countries need over $400 billion every single year just to cope with the damage that's already unavoidable. And here's where you see the disconnect in just stark black and white numbers. A new fund for loss and damage was a huge promise, but the initial pledges that came in, $250 million. That is less than 0.1% of what's needed every year. It's not just a gap, it's a canyon between the promise and the reality. And it wasn't just loss and damage. Another absolutely critical discussion, a proposal to triple the money for adaptation, to help countries build resilience for the future, that also hit a wall. The language was left in brackets, which in negotiation speak basically means we couldn't agree, so they just kicked the can down the road. So amidst all of this political gridlock and arguing, another group was there with a very, very clear message and a whole set of real solutions.
the indigenous peoples of the Amazon, the actual guardians of the land where this whole thing was taking place.
And they didn't just come as observers to watch from the sidelines. No, they came as protagonists. In their own political declaration, indigenous leaders from all across the Amazon basin said that they were the true hosts of COP30, and they argued that their ancestral knowledge offers real, proven solutions to the climate crisis. And their demands were so practical. They were saying, formally protect our lands and recognize that as a core climate policy. They demanded direct access to funding so it doesn't get lost in some bureaucratic maze. They asked for their territories to be declared completely off limits to destructive industries, and for protection for the people who were literally putting their lives on the line to defend those lands. And this message right here was a stark warning to the entire world. Protecting the Amazon isn't just some regional issue, it is a planetary necessity. The fate of their home and the fate of our global climate are completely intertwined. So, after all of that, where does the outcome of Belém leave us? Well, honestly, with a massive gap between what science is screaming that we need to do and what politics actually delivered. This chart really puts it all into perspective. The policies we have right now are putting us on a path to nearly 3 degrees of warming. Even if all the promises are kept, we're still looking at over 2 degrees. And to hit that critical 1.5 degree goal, we need to slash emissions by more than half in the next decade or so. The gap is just enormous, and COP30 did not close it. As you can imagine, the reaction from those who watched the negotiations minute by minute was just scathing. Environmental groups called it a profound failure. This quote here really sums up the deep sense of betrayal, basically saying the final text was so weak it was functionally useless for actually meeting our climate goals. And all of this leaves us with a final, really critical question to think about. This summit showed us that the entire global process can be completely gridlocked by powerful economic interests. So if these huge summits aren't the answer, where is real progress on climate actually going to come from?